Do you think that it is likely that we could get some sort of a deal by July, as Boris Johnson says?
Well, the government has been extremely clear that they want a deal, and this is really a challenge of statesmanship. Now, we've got to make sure that they do. The country needs an agreement, and we need to make sure that commercial links with our nearest partners continue, particularly at a time like this when we know what the impact of an initial interruption can be.
Tom, good morning. It's Manus. I suppose given the dislocation that we've seen all the way around in the past couple of months because of COVID and what we're all going through, should a transition period be something that really is on the table and might be beneficial given the huge global dislocation that we've seen?
Well, we're in a transition period. That's exactly what we're in. What we need is an agreement. Businesses have been coping with uncertainty for very many years now.
Should it be extended? That's the question. The question was, should it be extended? That was the question.
Well, I think deadlines matter in agreements, and those who said that Brexit would be easily deliverable have now had the best part of 3.5 years to deliver the deals that they promised in June all those years ago, and now they must deliver. So that's where we are.
Yeah, Tom, you've said that state-owned enterprises are going to go into this recession, as we're talking about the COVID situation now, with deeper pockets than free market companies. So you've also said that that's leaving the UK one of the few places where businesses are naked while everyone else is wearing armour. Where do you stand, therefore, on the situation of whether there needs to be a recalibration in the way the government handles China?
Well, China is the most obvious example of a country that has state-owned enterprises with extremely deep pockets. We know that there are many companies that draw on effectively state debt and often below market rates of state debt in order to expand and develop near monopolistic positions in various areas. Sometimes it's used as a debt trap, sometimes it's used to acquire innovative technology, but we know that this is one of the things that's going on, and indeed in that article for the Financial Times and in many other papers and news sources, people have spoken about it. This isn't news. The real challenge is how do we deal with it? Now, given that the European Union is tightening up, France is tightening up in particular, but others are too, Australia, Canada, the United States, and various other regimes tightening up. Even Japan has been tightening up its pharmaceutical industry and various other areas. I think it's important that the UK also has the ability to protect businesses in a sort of CFIUS type way. The Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States is an example of this, but actually various other jurisdictions have similar legislation.
Tom, when it comes to actual corporates, Huawei is at the centre of the 5G rollout, and I suppose the question for many people is there a chance, and again, it's a moot, whether they would reverse the decision to allow Huawei to be involved in the 5G rollout? What would it take to do that? Well,
Huawei is already involved in the 5G rollout. Huawei is providing quite a lot of the optical electronics that go into the fibre backbone, if you like, to the 5G rollout. If you speak to Openreach, who's doing a lot of the work on that, or indeed Vodafone or any of the others, you'll find that there's already a significant Huawei presence up to 65, and in fact, in a few examples, a few providers, it's 100%. That's where it is at the moment. But for those of us who challenge the strategic benefit of being dependent on a single provider, and indeed the benefit for the entire world of having so much dependency on a single state, no matter which state that happens to be. This is problematic, and that's why many of us are pushing for Britain to have a better balance of opportunity from other countries and from other providers. And indeed, many others are doing the same. France, after all, banned Huawei in 2009. So this isn't exactly an outlandish position. This is something that many of our European partners, including European partners who have much closer relationships with China than we do, have done for a number of years.
Tom, I know that the next thing I'm going to ask you about is not exactly something that your committee looks at, but it does matter for the way that Britain will be looked at by the rest of the world. And I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter protests and the approach that the government has taken so far. Do you think it's been the right approach? And what should it do from here, particularly with regard to a lot of the historic statues that are being pulled down by protesters around the country at the moment?
Well, I think that this is something that its time has really come. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that Black Lives Matter. That's perfectly obvious, and it's completely obvious from the days when I was working in your newsroom as well, about 20 years ago, that the disparity, the differences of faces that you see around the newsroom in Bloomberg today are different from the ones that I saw 20 years ago. Now that's progress, but there's a hell of a lot further to go, and there's a lot further to go around the UK and indeed around the world. Now, I do think that it's wrong to simply say that everything is bad in the UK. That's clearly not true. Much progress has been made, and some heroic leaders of the last 20, 30 years have made real change. But there's still further to go, and I think that the important thing is not to focus on statues of the past. I mean, nobody's seriously calling for Churchill's statue to be pulled down. The important thing to focus on is making sure that opportunities for all are real. And, you know, it's not just here about kids from ethnic minorities or black and minority ethnic communities, but actually the disparities of privilege that are even within the United Kingdom. We know, for example, that white working class kids have huge obstacles, and indeed something that many of your viewers internationally may not be quite as aware of. But, you know, bizarre things like accent can make a huge difference to opportunities and life chances in the UK, as National Security Council officer Fiona Hill spoke about in the United States.